You're watching CW Montana. This is the MTN 9 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. Bighorn County confirmed 3 more positive cases of COVID-19 today. A woman and man, both in their 20s, and a boy under 10 years old, all were asymptomatic. That means they showed no symptoms. Meanwhile, a push to get at least 800 people tested to get a baseline reading of COVID-19 in the community continued today with Montana Governor Steve Bullock on site in Crow Agency. QT's Mitch Legge was there and has the story.
A sight that's become familiar over the past few months. Cars lined up with passengers waiting to be tested for COVID-19. The site here in Crow Agency was open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Wednesday. It was staffed by the Montana National Guard, along with Bighorn County and Crow tribal officials. Tomorrow, the group will move down the road to Hardin during the same time, giving COVID-19 tests for free. A proactive approach compared to a reactive one that was seen earlier in the year.
Where we're trying to see how far has the virus spread in our community. It'll give us a baseline for going forward too, to sort of see how the virus might come into a community.
At 5 p.m. Wednesday, 3 new cases of COVID-19 were identified in Bighorn County. The patients were asymptomatic and found through recent testing events like this one. The drive-up test site was implemented through conversations with the Crow Tribe and Montana Governor Steve Bullock's office. Local staff from Indian Health Services and other agencies helped perform the tests.
For all of them to collaborate together, it's perfect because that's unity at its best. Despite which party you're with, it doesn't matter. Right now, it's for the people.
A similar surveillance test site was used 2 weeks ago with the Fort Belknap Reservation. Bullock said the hope is to bring more testing to Montanans because resources are now more widely available than they were earlier in the year.
But I'm comfortable that we've now gotten in line, both private and public, the resources that we need to test people along the way, and just really encouraging folks to get out and get tested.
Now, the Sentinel COVID-19 testing site was a true community effort between local, tribal, and state officials, something that Montana Governor Steve Bullock hopes will continue in the future. Reporting in Crow Agency, Mitch Legge, MTN News.
Hi, thanks, Mitch. And as Mitch mentioned, the testing operation will be in Hardin tomorrow from 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. That will be at Hardin High School. Bighorn County residents just need a valid ID, home address, and a current phone number. Well, some people have tried to draw comparisons between COVID-19 and influenza, but with the United States reaching more than 100,000 COVID-related deaths now, health experts say it is clear that COVID-19 has had a far more devastating impact. The CDC has estimated there were at least 24,000 deaths related to influenza during the recent flu season in the U.S., and more than 35,000 died from COVID-19 in the last month alone. Montana hasn't been hit nearly as hard as the rest of the nation, with the state just announcing its 17th death. There have been 26 deaths related to the flu in the state. State health officials say a key point to understand about the 2 viruses is that we have the tools to effectively combat influenza. All we have is social distancing for COVID-19. It's something I talked to Yellowstone County Health Officer John Felton about.
We have a vaccine for influenza. Now, it's not a perfect vaccine, but there's lots of evidence that says people who get annual influenza vaccinations, they might still get influenza, but they'll get a less virulent form. They're protected. There's a treatment for influenza, and we know how that bug acts. You know, this is a virus that has really only been identified for about 5 months. We don't know how it's going to evolve over time. We don't know if it's going to be stable or if it's going to change a lot. And the other thing, I think we're probably seeing I would bet we're seeing some reduction in influenza this year because those same measures of social distancing and washing your hands and masking and staying home when you're sick, all those things help people not get influenza.
Montana has also seen a much smaller number of COVID-19 cases, even compared to our neighboring states. The state is currently at 45 cases per 100,000 people. Idaho, Wyoming, and the Dakotas are all at least 3 times that now. Well, some businesses are requiring their customers to wear masks when entering their stores. MTN's Alexia Guello investigated whether those businesses can or cannot mandate masks for their customers.
The owner of Real Food Market and Deli stands outside and greets his customers by providing them a mask or thanking them for wearing a mask. The market began a new rule requiring their customers to wear a mask when in the store.
Well, we're trying to save people's lives, and masks seem like a really easy way to keep people from getting sick.
In legal terms, one Helena lawyer who practices civil law confirmed with MTN that businesses do have the right to require customers to wear masks because they have the right to refuse service to anyone. The lawyer says it is only illegal if they refuse service based only on a protected class, like race, ethnicity, or religion. As far as ethics, there are two sides, according to a professor.
If you show up and you're giving out masks, people will think, well, you must think that I'm sick or I could be sick, and maybe that means you think I don't take care of myself. I've also read, though, that some people took it the other way around. If you show up with a mask, sometimes people describe that as virtue signaling. Virtue signaling, the idea of saying to everybody, hey, I'm a good person. Look how good I am. I've got my mask on.
The owner of Birds and Beasleys is also requiring masks for customers. He likened wearing a mask to wearing a seatbelt.
It's as simple as putting on a seatbelt. We don't do it because we expect to get into an accident. We're not wearing the mask because we expect to get sick. We're just trying to keep track so that we don't have another uptick in infections.
The market has received backlash for their mask rule, including a phone call about a possible protest in the future. In Helena, I'm Alexi Guayo, MTN News.
Well, both businesses give masks if you don't have one and offer curbside pickup. Riverstone Health announced today COVID-19 testing will soon start in Yellowstone County senior care facilities. Facilities will contact residents and their family members about an effort to test all residents and staff. Recently, Governor Steve Bullock directed the state to expand testing to include all residents and employees, even if they have no symptoms. Billings Symphony is tuning up to hold live performances at 8 of the senior living homes around Billings. The trio started their performances today at Highgate Senior Living. Of course, they had to stay outside the window due to COVID-19 restrictions, then moved on to Sweetwater Retirement, Morningstar Senior Living, and then on to West Park Village. Billings Symphony Education Director Candy Holzer says they're hoping to enrich the residents' lives through music with this little tour. Tomorrow, the members of the Symphony will visit the Springs in the morning, the Legacy, Windstone, and Eagle Cliff Manor in the afternoon. An update tonight on the Montana Relief Fund. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Montana has announced a $100,000 donation. The foundation is part of the Montana Relief Fund, which supports Montanans in need of financial support due to the COVID-19 pandemic, including nonprofit organizations. As of today, the Blue Cross Blue Shield grant brings the grand total of our Montana Relief Fund to almost $250,000.
To make sure that seniors and children knew where their next meals were coming from, to make sure that providers had the equipment that they needed to safely treat our patients across the state of Montana. So we just really wanted to be able to invest in the community organizations like the Montana Community Foundation, who are the experts on the front lines of dealing with this pandemic.
Well, the Montana Supreme Court ruled today that the current rule on counting absentee ballots will stand for the all mail-in ballot primary election next week. That means to be counted, a ballot must be received at the county election office by 8 p.m. election day. That's next Tuesday. The court's 5-2 decision blocks last week's order from a district judge that said ballots need only be postmarked by next Tuesday to be counted. District Judge Don Harris of Billings made his ruling in a lawsuit brought by the Democratic Party groups, who said the current deadline can disenfranchise some voters. Secretary of State Corey Stapleton, Attorney General Tim Fox, both Republicans, asked the High Court to block Harris's order and reinstate the current deadline. The High Court majority agreed, saying voter instructions sent with ballots on May 8th are clear that they must be returned by Election Day. The Supreme Court says it will hear an appeal of Harris's order later and decide whether it should stand for the general election. As of Tuesday night, almost 237,000 Montanans have already submitted their primary election ballot. Well, both the Republican and Democratic nominations are up for grabs next Tuesday for the governor's race, and tonight Q2's Jay Cohn zeroes in on the Democratic race between Whitney Williams and Mike Cooney.
Who are you picking next Tuesday in the Democratic governor's race? Newcomer Whitney Williams or tried and true Mike Cooney? With virtually no public polling in this race, even the experts don't know what to expect.
You know, I absolutely have no clue. I mean, there's been no public polling in that race, so that doesn't give me anything to go by. The only other thing I can look at is the amount of money being spent, which is about equal on both sides.
Both in terms of spending and fundraising, the Cooney-Williams race is tight. And with the Williams camp buoyed recently by a $700,000 ad buy from Emily's List, it's getting tighter.
They dropped $700,000, which doesn't sound like a lot of money. We're used to these $50, $60, $70 million Senate races. But in a primary, in a time where media's television ads are still relatively cheap, and there hasn't been a ton of money spent in the primary, it's been about equal, that could maybe put enough of a finger on the scale to help Whitney Williams at the last minute.
Oftentimes you can get a feel for the outcome of a race by looking at fundraising. So here you go, the latest numbers as of mid-May. Williams has raised the most, eclipsing the $1 million mark. But just 30% of that comes from Montana. Half of her dollars come from out of state, as much as 21% from California, 14% from Washington State. And she's chipped in $55,000 of her own money. Mike Cooney has raised over $886,000 as of mid-May, with more than 8,000 separate donations. And when you add in the small non-itemized donations, as much as 3/4 of his cash comes from Montana. He's also getting money from all across the country, with small $5 and $10 donations from nearly every state, thanks to Act Blue, a national Democratic fundraising group. And another wild card this year, the all-mail-in election. And thanks to the pandemic, an evolving campaign face-off on social media.
My daughter, who's 9, plays a lot of games on the internet. She gets Whitney Williams ads a lot. That might show you a little bit that they've maybe done a better job of getting out there. On the other hand, my 9-year-old daughter's not voting.
Tomorrow night, who's winning the Cooney-Williams race in terms of endorsements? In Billings, I'm Jay Cohn reporting for MTN News.
All right, thank you, Jay. Again, if you haven't turned in your ballot yet, you have until Election Day next Tuesday to do so. Ahead on tonight's 9 o'clock news, the latest on a major change coming to Montana's medical marijuana system. And the heat is about to be on in a big way. Bob has a red-hot forecast coming up.